You know what you should do? You should follow me on Twitter at Brommer018. Link in the description. Do it now. What is going on, everyone? It's Brommer18 here, back again with another football feature. Hope you're all doing well. Today, I want to talk about something a little bit different. So, it's essentially a kind of reaction video. I'm doing this in the wake of the final sort of appeal hearing of Manchester City's clearance of breaching financial fair play rules. So I'm not really going to go too much into that, but what I do want to talk about today is my thoughts on FFP, financial fair play, for those of you who don't know what that is, and why, essentially it doesn't work, it isn't working. The idea, whilst it's kind of there, it's not really what football needs, and why it should be replaced by a salary cap. Now, it's a fairly controversial way of looking at things, and we're going to go into more detail about that. But first off, I want to give you guys, for anyone who doesn't really know, sort of a bit of a background into FFP, what financial fair play is, why it was introduced, and why it doesn't work. So FFP is essentially a way of managing and analysing how much money owners are investing into their clubs and how much clubs are spending. So the overall basis is, there are a set of rules, and these rules differ based on country. So UEFA have their own rules for clubs that are in European competitions, but then you might find the likes of, say the Premier League or the Football League or then the Serie A have different rules based upon that as well, so sort of built upon that. So with sort of UEFA, you're only allowed to make a certain amount of investment in terms of coming from the owner. So in UEFA's case, you're only allowed to make a loss of around 30 million over 3 seasons. That's if your owner is in fact injecting money, which pretty much all clubs they do have that. So essentially a loss of 10 million per season over a course of 3 seasons is the maximum amount that you're allowed to lose, and that's really the main sort of element to it. In say I know the Championship, for example, which has been quite a big thing at the moment because a few clubs in that division are sort of being investigated for breaching these rules. You're only allowed to make a loss of 13 million per season, which is 39 million over the course of 3 seasons. In the Premier League, I think it's a bit high. It's around 100 million, 105 million, I believe, is the total thing, which is a lot of money. To make a loss of 105 million over the course of 3 seasons would be incredibly disastrous, really. So, it's unlikely that sort of thing would be happening, particularly in a Premier League club. Now, the official reasoning as to why these rules were implemented by UEFA and by different leagues was essentially to stop clubs going bankrupt. So let's give you an example. Let's say I go and purchase a club. The club doesn't make lots of money. Maybe they're losing a fair bit of money, but I go and purchase a club. And I've got lots of money. I'm a billionaire wanting to just throw cash at a club. Yeah, just throw anything at a club, make it successful. So let's say I'm throwing in money. We're buying lots of players for big money. We're paying big wages to players. And after maybe 3 or 4 years, let's say it's not working. Let's say I've gone through managers, paid lots of compensation, paid big money, thrown money around, and it hasn't worked, and the club is no further forward. The club's not having success. So now the club is spending a lot of money on wages. It's already paid out a lot of cash for transfer fees, for bonuses, for all these sort of different expenditure. And let's say all of a sudden I go, you know what? I'm going to cut my losses now. This hasn't worked. I've invested a lot of money into this. It's not working, and I'm just going to stop putting money into the club. So now that club, which wasn't making any money anyway, wasn't making a lot of money. Let's say it's a fairly small club with a, not a massive fan base, doesn't make a lot of turnover. So now let's say I stop putting my money in. Now that club is paying a massive wage bill. They've paid big money for transfer fees. They might still be paying them in installments, and now they haven't got any money coming in from the owner to supplement that. So therefore, how's the club going to pay for it? The club can't afford to do it. Therefore, let's say the owner goes, hey, well, no one wants to buy the club because they know that they've got to cover all these costs, particularly for the money that I'm looking for it. And then, that's when clubs go into administration, they go liquidation, and then they go bust. They cease to exist. And so the official reasoning is for FFP to stop that, to stop clubs making a loss, because it's all, of course, dependent on how much money the owner's putting in. Because a lot of people say about FFP, well, if your owner has that money, why shouldn't he be able to just throw it at it? And, that's sort of the reason. So with that, you can understand that. But of course, a lot of fans who are sort of sceptical about financial fair play say that the real reasoning why UEFA have done this is to create a sort of big club, small league, to separate any other clubs from the real top earning high clubs like your Manchester United, your Barcelonas, your Real Madrids, etc. All of these clubs. And the thing is, it has sort of done that because, of course, they're making a lot more turnover naturally just from, merchandising sales and global image rights, all those sort of things, compared to clubs who are lower down in the division. So it has created that gap, in between. It sort of created a ruling elite of the big clubs. So, that's why a lot of people are sceptical of it, things along those lines. And, I think there's something to that. At the end of the day, how can clubs compete when, they're not allowed to spend as much as the next club, And that sort of leads me on as to why financial fair play, just doesn't work, and it isn't working. For one, we've had the likes of Man City, and, I'm not really going to get too much into that. You can sort of, find out your own sort of things about that and why they are or are not in the wrong. But for a lot of clubs who have quite clearly bypassed the rules completely, and have made inflated sales, things like that, sponsorship deals, purchase stadiums, and they get away with it. There are a lot of clubs who have fell foul of these rules, and still they're not getting penalised for it. And that sort of nicely brings me into what we can do to sort of combat, FFP not working, and what we can sort of replace that with to make sure we can really do what it says on the tin and make fair play, but also to achieve what FFP is trying to set out to achieve officially, which is to stop clubs spending beyond their means, to stop clubs going bust. And I think the most efficient way to combat that would be a salary cap. Now, it's a fairly controversial way of looking at it, although not in my mind, but it seems some people, particularly fans of the bigger clubs, are against this, and we'll get into why that is later on. But with a salary cap, you can achieve, what you can with FFP, but far, far more. You can stop clubs if you're limiting their spending, particularly on wages. And we can talk about transfer, sort of spending, another time. But first off, on wages, which is where the bulk of sort of expenditure comes from, really, and not just the initial wages, but also bonuses, things along those lines. You can stop clubs spending beyond their means. You can limit what they can spend in those sort of areas. But on top of that, you can also achieve a level playing field, a fair way for anyone to have a good crack at the whip. Now, the best way to look at this is to look at where that has been in place in other sports and in other areas, and where, how that has been successful. So, of course, now, football is my number one sport. It is my favourite sport, but there are other sports I like as well, and one of those is the NFL. Now, with the NFL, they have a salary cap in place, and you've seen the results of that. You've seen the fact that any team can win the Super Bowl on any given season, and the only teams that shine through are the ones with the best systems in place, because they've all got the same amount to spend, in terms of wages, in terms of salaries. They don't have transfer fees there, they have trades, they have, free agency, so there's a little bit difference there, and that's something we would have to work around. But overall, like I say, the teams that shine through are the ones with the best coaching, the most competently run clubs, the most intelligently run clubs, and the ones who are most sort of intelligent in their decision making. They make the right decisions, they do the right things, they run it in the correct way, and so they're the ones that shine through. Like the New England Patriots. But other than that, anyone can win it. Anyone can win the Super Bowl at any given season. Whereas in football, it's the same teams year in, year out, winning the same competitions. Now you can look to the Premier League and you can say, well, predominantly 4 teams. You know, you can have Man City, Man United, and Chelsea and Liverpool. Leicester came in there 1 year with a complete fluke, albeit we absolutely loved it, and we want to see more of that. You know, we want to see more of any team being able to win the competition, not the same teams. You know, before Liverpool won it this year, it had been Chelsea and Man City repeatedly, just switching between those 2 teams. You know, we can't have that. And if you look at other leagues, it's even more dramatic. PSG, every single season we win Ligue 1. And then you have La Liga, Real Madrid or Barcelona. 1 year Atletico picked them to the title, and again, that was fantastic. But other than that, it's the same teams, year in, year out. Bayern Munich, every year in the Bundesliga, they've just won, 8 in a row. That's ridiculous. You know, how can that be entertaining? You know, Juventus with the Serie A, just unprecedented, you know? And so, what all these teams have in common is that they spend the most money in their division. They have the highest wage bills by far, and they spend the most money. So obviously, more times than not, they are going to shine through, because when you can afford to sign the best players, you know, surprise, surprise, you win the titles. And so, you know, that's happening all over the place. And, you know, some way you can sort of equate to this is in other sports. Again, you keep looking towards other examples, seeing how it works. And Formula 1 is a great example. Now, in Formula 1, 2 teams have won the Constructors' Championship in the last 10 seasons. Red Bull won the first 4, and Mercedes have won the last 6. And so, you know, Formula 1 have reacted to that, and now they're introducing a budget, you know, a budget maximum of, it was about around 180 million, 170 million. I think it's now, because of the virus, it's been reduced to approximately 140. You know, my figures aren't entirely correct there, but it's around those figures. Certainly something I've looked into. And so, you know, they've said enough is enough. You know, how can people be entertained? People are falling out of love with those sports because it's the same teams. And I know for a fact that people have fell out of love with football because they know year in, year out, it's whoever spends the most money. You know, when you watch something on, you know, punditry, Sky Sports, BT Sport, whatever it will be, they'll always say, you know, you've got to throw money at it. You know, you've got to throw money. They need more money. Why is it about that? It should be about the football, not about how much money teams can spend in order to buy their way to the title. And so, you know, you don't just achieve with a salary cap what FFP has set out to, you know, sort of achieve, which is to stop clubs going bust and spending beyond their means. You also create a level playing field, and that is the most important thing. And I think we are so far behind in football in many, many ways. We're far behind in the way in which with technology, etc., with likes of VAR. You know, that was in other sports long time ago, and we're only just getting to grips with it, and there's a lot of improvements that need to be made in those areas. We're behind with this as well, with the likes of salary cap, with creating a level playing field. You know, people are falling more and more out of love with the game. You know, and how can you be entertained by the same teams winning it every year? You know, so it's one of those things. And so, you know, I want to look into reasons for and against, you know, the salary cap. And first off, I want to look at why people are against a salary cap. Now, one of the, you know, sort of pundits who has been most outspoken about, you know, the salary cap would be Gary Neville. Now, that makes a lot of sense to me, because Gary Neville's Salford team, of course, Salford City, who he owns, along with, you know, the rest of the members of the class of '92, they bought their way up the leagues. They were spending ridiculous money for those leagues, and they've been able to gain promotion after promotion purely because they were able to spend tons and tons of money that were in another stratosphere compared to all the other teams in those divisions. They were signing players from 3, 4, 5 leagues above where they were because they were able to throw so much money at them, ridiculous fees. And so, you know, it's only natural he's going to be against it, because otherwise his Salford City team wouldn't have had that sort of success. And the same with his Man United team. You know, do you think Man United, with the way they have been incompetently run by the Glazers, by Ed Woodward, by different managers they've had over the past years, do you think they would even be in with a chance to qualify for the Champions League this season if they had a level playing field with the others? If they were able to bring in Bruno Fernandes and pay him in between, you know, 100 and 200,000 pounds per week, you know, that it wouldn't have happened, you know, because other teams who've ran their club in a much more efficient and effective manner, like a Wolves, like a Sheffield United, would have pipped them. They would have overtaken them, you know, and that's where it is. And, you know, a lot of sort of people I've seen being against the salary cap is the fans of the big clubs. And that's because they know that, you know, if there was a salary cap introduced and you create a level playing field, their teams are less likely to see success, because then you're really, you know, showing through how well run the club is. I mean, it's more about coaching, and it's more about ability, and it's more about, you know, sort of effective planning and strategies, rather than just throwing money at it. The biggest sort of point of against this argument, which is, you know, fair enough, is, well, you know, the players sort of are on the wrong end of that, because at the end of the day, let's say you're earning £150,000 a week with a salary cap, that might go down to £50,000 a week, which, you know, a 66.6% reduction in your salary, that is quite a lot, and that does sound quite a lot. But my argument to that would be, well, is £50,000 per week not enough for you to live on? You know, is that going to leave you homeless? You know, I don't really see what the issue is there, because we've seen salary caps in other sports, like the NFL, which I've already mentioned, and players are still getting paid an absolute ton. But the thing is with that is that if your team can't afford to pay you the money you're looking for, another team will be able to afford it, and another team will pay you that sort of wage, because they'll have more room in their salary cap. You know, there are two ways to really go about it in terms of a wage maximum, and that is either you put a maximum on the amount a player can earn individually, so let's say a £50,000 per week maximum on each player, or you have an overall budget and you can work within that budget for each and every player, so different players can earn different amounts as long as you're within that top figure, which I think is a fair way to do it, and that's the way the NFL does it. And so, you know, there are ways in which it can be done. There are other areas that people have looked at, such as a luxury tax, in which there is a limit. But if you go over that limit, you can still pay it, but then you have to also pay the same amount into a pot, and that pot is spread amongst teams who are under that limit, which is a very, very interesting way to look at it. I think that's done in Major League Baseball. I don't follow that, so you know, I can't be 100% sure as to how that works, but they've employed that sort of system for quite a while. So, you know, I think that there's clearly merits to it, you know, and you still were able to create a fairly level playing field in that sort of area. You know, in terms of the reasons for, I've already sort of stated my case here. We sort of combated out all of the reasons that I've put forward against. You know, I think this is a no-brainer. I really, really do. I don't see the need to sort of keep the big clubs happy when so many other clubs I know, or I 100% believe, would be in favour of a salary cap, would be in favour of making it a level playing field. Surely that's what you want. In terms of the reasons for, you know, I've sort of stated my case along the way, what it sort of enables you to do, and we're sort of combating the reasons against for it. You know, I think this is a no-brainer. I really, really do. I don't understand why you wouldn't want football to be an unpredictable level playing field, because at the end of the day, say what you want, but it is predictable. It's the same teams year in, year out who win the same competitions, minus one or two shocks like a Leicester City. But, you know, we've never seen that in this stage before. Even when Blackburn won the Premier League, that's because they spent an awful lot of money. You know, and that's going back 25 years ago plus. So, for me, it's got to change. We've got to take a step forward. And in order to achieve what FFP has set out to achieve, a salary cap is needed. So, you know, on that note, get me your replies and your thoughts on this down in the comment section. I'm really interested to see what you guys think. I can imagine I'm going to have a lot of throwback on this, and a lot of people won't be happy, particularly fans of the bigger clubs who are against this sort of thing. But for me, this is the way forward, and it's a next step that football needs to take to get out of the stone ages of whoever pays most money wins, and, you know, we can press on with, you know, creating the game back to what it should be, which is the best team, the best run team wins, essentially. So let me know in the comment section what you think, and I will do my best to get back to you. If you've enjoyed this video, as always, please leave a like, but most importantly, subscribe to the channel for more regular gaming and football content. Don't forget to ring the bell as well, so that you get notifications every time I upload. That is round about here. And on that note, we are going to finish it off there. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time, I will see you soon.